Still in the middle of nowhere, I received the divorce paperwork in my inbox. A PDF attachment ended a 13-year marriage. Staff Sergeant Nathan here, 42 years old and serving with the 82nd Airborne. Becky felt she had had enough waiting after I had been in Kandahar for 4 months. "We need to act like grown-ups about this," the subject line said. The message consisted of just 3 sentences. The paperwork had already been filed by her. Our joint account had already been drained by her. She had previously relocated her new partner Jeremy to our Spokane home. After reading the email twice, I shut down my laptop, showered in the break room, got ready for my shift, and remained silent the entire time. I only said, "Understood," when I returned to my bunk that night. No more arguing, pleading, or threatening, that was it. My dorm roommate Wilson detected an anomaly. He said, "You good man," without taking his eyes from his book. Yes, I did mention that there was some items back home. After his nod, the conversation ended. Guys in the military know when to back off. Actually, I wasn't taken aback. Things had altered, little things, 6 months before deployment. While I was at the dentist, Becky stopped inquiring about my day, took a late shift answering phones, and began going to the gym 3 times a week, but I never felt like I worked out. All new threads, acquaintances I've never met, and phone passwords for her. There was no need for me to confront her, begin monitoring her messages, or even follow her. That's not my personality. I, too, wasn't completely oblivious, so I made my own stealthy maneuvers. Slightly more than that, merely safeguards. My birth certificate, marriage license, property title with solely my name on it, due to the VA loan, and paperwork for military benefits were all stashed in a storage facility across town. I combined my mother's antique silverware with my grandfather's watch. Crucial matters. In addition, I began transferring funds from my regular paycheck to an account I had set up at a different bank. I didn't go all out, but it was enough so that I wouldn't have to start again if things went wrong. She embraced me at the airport the night prior to my deployment and urged me to remain safe, all right? Her expression was one of farewell to a colleague rather than a husband leaving for the battlefield. Her eyes were parched. At the time, I should have known, but I secretly wished I may have been mistaken. Yes, I was wrong. I always think things through before responding, and she had no idea that I had been practicing for this exact moment. I do, however, manage to finish them. It was at a friend's 2010 cookout that I first met Becky. In the time between tours, I stayed in Spokane with my friend Jason. She was about to graduate from nursing school when she took a job as an administrative assistant at a dentist office. "Less anxiety," she remarked. We tied the knot 8 months down the road. Even though she never really grasped the gravity of my duty, Becky used to express her pride in me. Her brother worked as a chemist, while her father managed a bank. Nobody in her family has ever served in the military. After 15 years, the Army was more than just a job, it was my career. When she asked when I was going to acquire a real job, she didn't understand. This house was purchased by us in 2014. It was simple and ours, yet it was special. A peaceful neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, and a modest yard. Since the VA loan was in my name alone, I was the only one on the mortgage. However, I included her in the deed because that's how married people share things. A year following our wedding, my dad had a heart attack while shoveling snow and passed away. Even though she never smoked a cigarette in her life, my mom passed away 3 years later from lung cancer. Even though it wasn't a fortune, their bequest was plenty for Becky and me to settle her student loans and have some savings left over. During our marriage, I was deployed 4 times, twice to Iraq and twice to Afghanistan. Becky appeared to be acting out a character she had outgrown every time I returned home. She was increasingly distant and agitated. She once informed me that I didn't enlist to be a military wife after I brought up the possibility of re-upping for an additional 4 years. I'm sick and weary of being by myself. Yes, I was aware of it, but the Army was the one institution where I had a genuine sense of belonging. I excelled in my role. Many looked to me for support. Changes began in 2019, albeit minor ones at first. When I called during Becky's girls' nights, she became furious because I began to brag about Melissa, her friend who had recently divorced and was apparently living it up, and because I made remarks about how we clearly no longer had anything in common. I proposed therapy, but she said we were great, that it was all just a phase. After that, There were the late hours at the office, the weekend getaways with complete strangers, the new wardrobe, and the gym membership that she hardly ever utilized. I ought to have spoken up to her. However, I have never and will never handle things in that way. I learned from my dad to be confident of myself before speaking or doing anything. My intuition told me something was coming, so I kept an eye out and silently got ready. And you learn to listen to your intuition in this life. My phone buzzed 2 weeks after I got the divorce email when I was seated in the mess hall. Our bank app sent us a message. Another withdrawal, totaling $8,500, nearly all that remained. With my fork put down, I launched the app. We were down to $212.37 in the joint account. All of our savings, $47,000, that we had worked so hard to accumulate were vanished. I didn't identify the account that it was transferred to. One of the guys in my unit, Murphy, looked over. Unfavorable information. My phone is secure. Nope, it's simply some account details. From the base phone center, I contacted our bank that evening. Becky had been secretly shifting money for weeks, starting with little amounts and eventually moving on to larger ones. The day following my deployment, the major transfers commenced. After I hung up, I lingered in the corridor for quite a while, observing men laughing as they called their families. The world around me was going about its usual business as mine went up in flames. I was located by Wilson at that moment. He stated he overheard Alvarez say you looked like you'd seen a ghost during dinner. Hello, how are things? Although I am not one to divulge private information, I felt that Wilson had saved my life in Kandahar when I was in a jam. I had faith in him. I informed him that my wife had drained our bank accounts and had taken her boyfriend into our home. While on patrol last week, I sent the divorce papers. Wilson refrained from giving me the typical nonsense. Unless you're looking for someone better, I'm sorry, or that's tough. What are you planning? He inquired. I am not sure just yet, I replied. That was his cue to nod. I am here to help in any way I can. I slept poorly that night. Becky likely forgot that I could remotely access our home security system, so I got out my laptop and logged in. My coffee mug, Seahawks hoodie, and an unfamiliar man walking our dog were seen on camera, as was Becky, laughing in the kitchen that I had rebuilt on my own during my previous vacation. The cameras also showed an unusual truck in our driveway. I felt a change within. Not wrath, precisely. Something chillier, less opaque. I shut down the computer and retrieved my phone to jot down some notes. Give James a call. He's a former Army comrade turned lawyer. Review the terms of the VA loan. Reach out to the Master Sergeant regarding the need for emergency leave. Go over the paperwork for the home refinancing that Becky casually brought up last year. Verify my military pension fund's safety. My sadness had subsided. Even the absence of anger was odd. My mind was sharp, as if I were plotting a daring expedition. At this point, feelings had no bearing. The focus here was on tactics. Before my shift began at 0500, I emailed James, stating that I urgently needed discreet legal assistance. Call me on this secure line only. His response didn't arrive for another hour. After that call ended, I had a clear idea of what to do. Yelling wasn't necessary. Threatening wasn't necessary. There was no need for me to approach her. I had to do nothing more than sit tight and watch as her own behavior set the trap. It took me 2 months, but I was back in the United States. Instead of informing Becky of my impending return, making any phone calls or sending any texts, I simply used a false identity to check into a motel in downtown Spokane and got in touch with James. 10 miles outside of town is where we met at a diner. As he slid into the booth, he muttered, "You look like hell." Feeling the same way, I responded. James presented me with a folder. Received the house deed, loan paperwork, bank records, and everything else we talked about. He withdrew an additional sheet of paper. While researching your finances, I came across something intriguing. My signature appeared on a refinance application, but it wasn't really my signature. Someone had attempted a clone, however they omitted certain details. It wasn't my stroke pattern, and the middle initial was messed up. Even though I already knew the answer, I asked if Becky had done it. Jim gave a subtle nod. March of last year. Withdraw $30,000 using the equity. The VA loan is in your name alone, so your signature is necessary for that. I told him to forge my signature, use our house as collateral for a loan, drain our bank accounts, and then file for divorce. Dynamic lady. As James mentioned, it improves. As a co-applicant, she included her boyfriend. There's a record of his. This year, I was charged with 2 DUIs and 1 count of fraud. I drew a long breath. Where do I stand? Many, according to James. To begin, though, you must ascertain your desires. It lingered in my mind. What is rightfully mine is mine, and I want her to know that her actions will have consequences. A grin spread over James' face. So, this is how we proceed. I passed our house the following day in my car. The vehicle belonging to her lover had vanished, but Becky's car remained in the driveway. I pondered going up to her house and confronting her as I parked down the street and observed for a little. It was never intended that way. Nevertheless, I proceeded to visit the bank, where I encountered the loan officer responsible for the refinance. I presented him with my military ID, the original signature on my driver's license, and the counterfeit paperwork. He became pale-skinned. This needs to be reported right away. I get it, I responded. I have already reported it to the authorities. Becky texted me later that night. Tell me who you've been chatting with at the bank. Somebody was inquiring, according to Jeremy. I remained silent. The following day, I made an official appearance at the county clerk's office to submit documents opposing the refinance on the grounds of fraud and to formally notify that no alterations may be made to the property without my consent. Becky called again 2 days after that. I let it to reach voicemail. Hey Nathan, I think it would be a good idea for us to communicate. Regarding the residence, the bank contacted. Tell me what you're up to. If this pertains to the divorce, we can have a mature conversation about it. As if they were grown-ups themselves. Her email's exact words. I chose to remain silent. That afternoon, James gave a call. They put a hold on the funds for the refinance, and that's not all. You do realize that your truck's driver is your wife's boyfriend? Is it the one you have? Yeah. This morning, he was stopped for driving when his license was suspended due to prior DUIs. They seized the car. Okay, I responded. The truck also contained several intriguing items that he possessed. Prescription pads from Becky's place of employment, a dental practice. Those weren't empty. I tucked my eyelids shut. Prescription pads have been stolen from her? Presumably, yes. Authorities are looking into the matter. Seated on the edge of the motel bed, I hung up the phone. I hadn't anticipated how huge this was going to get. A part of me considered contacting Becky to forewarn her. Conventional wisdom. Until the security camera footage popped into my head. At home with my dog in my life. Dispose of it as if it were worthless. Now we were on the right road. I was stuck and didn't want to turn around. In the morning following our meeting, the bank's fraud investigator and I met. Thompson was his name. A short man with a coffee spill on his tie and looking exhausted. As he scattered papers about his desk, he made the comment that this occurs more frequently than one would expect. The spouse leaves. An opportunity is noticed by the other spouse. What comes next? Excuse me, I inquired. The fraudulent refinance funds have been stopped, but there is an issue. A portion of the funds has already been used. What is the price? Nearly half, or $14,600. I drew nearer. Has it disappeared? Thompson was unsure. That information is not meant to be shared by me. I own this house. It is my name that has been forged. Someone took my money. Gently lifting his head from his computer, he gave me a nod. These are the withdrawals from the account used for refinance. At first, I only skimmed the items. Daniel Spencer has received multiple transfers. Jeremy, no. Something else entirely, the name of which remained vague. I desired to know who Daniel Spencer was. Shrug, Thompson said. You might want to have your attorney subpoena these documents. It's not my department's responsibility. Upon exiting the bank, I promptly contacted James. Dan Spencer, he said it again. I will perform a check. He contacted again after an hour. I understand. That person is real estate agent Daniel Spencer. Has expertise in making rapid sales. Transacting in cash. I mentioned that she was considering selling our house. The epiphany struck me like a ton of bricks. Presumably, yes. He likely used the deposits as earnest money to move forward with a listing. The intriguing part, though, begins at this point. Prior to this, Spencer and Jeremy Ryan were business partners. Does that mean, Jeremy Ryan, that... Indeed, he is your wife's boyfriend. They have completed 3 trades in the last 2 years as a team. In an effort to take it all in, I sat down on a park bench. It was more than simply Becky ditching me for another guy, then. It was excuse me, a prearranged procedure? Perhaps, James said with care. I looked into Jeremy Ryan a bit. It follows a pattern. Supports spouses who are away at war or women going through a divorce. So far, I have identified 3 cases. As usual, one of Spencer's clients buys the woman's house for significantly less than what it's worth. Ryan makes a profit. Next, he continues. As for Becky, was she aware of this? No easy answer. Perhaps she is complicit, or perhaps she is also a victim. I massaged my cheeks. Beyond Becky's betrayal, this had become much more than that. A greater thing was happening here. Statistically significant. Victims included members of other military families as well. Where do we begin? Excuse me, I inquired. James announced that he has already informed the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI. This applies to both active-duty military and veterans, and it transcends state boundaries. They're curious. I drank a drink and sat in my motel room that night, trying to make sense of things. Curious as to whether Becky had been manipulating me during our marriage, or whether she had been involved with Jeremy's plot. Doubting its significance. It was my phone. Becky once more. Hey Nathan, give me a call. There has been some word from the bank regarding fraud. Plus, Jeremy was taken into custody while operating your vehicle. What is going on? I have no idea. My eyes lingered on the message. My next move was to Google Daniel Spencer. As she began to type, 3 dots appeared. She paused, restarted, and ultimately finished typing. What are you talking about? I'm confused. I wrote 14,600. Different transfers. Listing a home? 10 minutes pass with no answer. So, it's not what you would expect. Before going to sleep, I silenced my phone. James contacted the following morning. An FBI meeting is being sought. 4 months, they have been looking into Ryan and Spencer. You may be the first instance to crack it, but you certainly aren't the first. I hadn't felt anything like contentment since receiving that email about the divorce. This was not because my marriage had ended, but rather because the truth was emerging. The FBI agents and I met at the Spokane field office. Patel and Donovan, the agents. They made notes of my statement and copied everything that James and I had collected. Agent Patel clarified that your case contributes to the pattern-making process. Displays purpose and structure. This becomes a conspiracy instead of a series of random events. Where does Becky stand? Excuse me, I inquired. My former spouse and current wife. A glance passed between the agents. Donovan cautiously stated that they are still trying to gauge her degree of engagement. Was money a problem ever brought up by her? Hurry up and sell the house. My mind went back. No matter what she said, we were broke. We ought to reduce our workforce. It seemed unnecessary to me. We were able to keep up with our mortgage payments using my wage. Noted by Patel. Tell me when that began. Roughly 6 months back then. About the time she probably crossed paths with Jeremy. The refinancing, too? Inquiring, Donovan spoke up. They never even brought it up in our session. During my deployment, she secretly altered my signature. They continued to inquire. Took further notes. Upon our completion, Patel presented her card to me. An email or phone call from us will proceed. Until then, spare your wife and Ryan any confrontation. This case must be constructed with utmost care. Nodding, I gave the signal. I comprehend. Later that night, I took another trip to our area. Parked at the foot of our street. It was Jeremy's truck again. I pulled it out of the impound lot. No sign of Becky's vehicle. It was my phone. Becky sent a text. We should meet face to face. Tomorrow, we can meet at Riverfront Park. In the morning, give you a call. During breakfast the following day, I showed James the text. He warned against going. Talking to her will not help anything at this moment. I won't, I declared. However, I'm curious as to what she's up to today, as she imagines we're meeting. At 9:30 in the morning, we parked across the street and drove to our house. Leaving the house at 9:45, Becky hopped in her car and drove off in the direction of Riverfront Park. Where do we go from here? What do you want? James inquired. Then we'll have to wait, I affirmed. A vehicle arrived 20 minutes after that. A Realty logo adorns the entrance. Spencer, Daniel, Jeremy stepped out to meet him. After chatting on the driveway, they entered the house. Does it make sense to adhere to their instructions? What do you want? James inquired. It was a no-go for me. Not necessary. Last year, I set up both inside and outdoor security cameras. They save files to the cloud. A grin spread over James' face. That was previously unmentioned. Refusing to come up, I retrieved my phone and declared. To make the security app visible to James, I angled the screen. Our living room was occupied by Spencer and Jeremy. Spencer had his camera out. Some of the house's features were being pointed out by Jeremy. I cranked up the level. According to what Spencer was suggesting, it should be listed by the weekend. Someone is already interested in buying from me. Same as before, cash offer. What is the price? Jeremy inquired. Is it $420? Our listing price is $470 and theirs is $420. There is joy in the air. How about the spouse? To hear Becky tell it, he's a major problem. Spencer waved with a disdainful air. Every guy in the military is the same. Despite their chatter, they have deployments and duties to attend to. He is willing to accept a settlement in order to resolve it. My gaze shifted to James. Do you understand? The broadcast was being recorded on his phone by him previously. Each and every syllable. In a brief message, I sent Agent Patel the link to the security stream. Present moment. The residence was encircled by FBI cars 30 minutes after that. Agents escorted Jeremy and Spencer out of the building while I stood across the street and observed. It was my phone. Security detail Patel. According to her, she managed to record them talking about the scam operation. In addition, there is an attempt to sell property under false pretenses, conspiracy, and wire fraud. You will be required to provide us with an official statement. Naturally, I responded. Where is Mr. Briggs? The scene was just entered by your wife. She is upset. Along the street, I cast my gaze. As FBI officials removed boxes of paperwork from our house, Becky stood on our yard with her hands covering her mouth. What becomes of her? Excuse me, I inquired. According to Patel, it differs. Regarding her knowledge. And regarding your desires. For an extended period, I observed Becky. Staying together for 13 years. The early years were good. Before this had transformed into. I finally spoke up about wanting what's right. There was rapid action in the federal case. As it turned out, a 3-state campaign targeted military families. Jeremy and Spencer were both implicated in this operation, and they both took pleas. Becky insisted she was unaware of the bigger picture. Jeremy, she was told, had persuaded her that I was stashing money and intended to abandon her with nothing. Took credit for the refinance, he claimed. Without question, she had complied. Perhaps that was a fact. I don't know. A compensation was acceptable to her in any case. Complete return of the funds that were taken. I give up any right to my pension from the military or the house. The forgery is the subject of a signed confession. I choose not to press charges as a result. It took 6 months after Kandahar sent that email to consummate the divorce. Not my fault. Separate, uncluttered space. Considering everything. Agent Patel called me on the day of the final signature. Jeremy Ryan's sentencing took place today. Convicted of 8 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. 12 was Spencer's score. Seemed like you would be interested in knowing. I thanked them. Additionally, she mentioned something else. Evidence suggests they have victimized 11 additional military families in this way. The pattern was built with the help of your case. Thanks to you, those families might receive their money back. I sat on the apartment porch as the sun sank after we ended the call. Considering those other households, other men who had gone off to war believing their families and spouses were secure returned to find them empty. I never imagined I would be the one to foil Jeremy and Spencer's scheme. What I really desired was what was rightfully mine. On the other hand, unexpected outcomes do happen occasionally. It was my phone. Becky sent a text. This is not how I had intended things to conclude. I remained silent. Nothing else could be said. I sold the house a year after that. No longer could I bear to be a resident there. Within those walls are too many memories, too much treachery. With the funds, I was able to purchase a little cabin just outside of Missoula, Montana. House has a brook behind house, 2 bedrooms, and 10 acres of property. Miles of empty space. I left the Army before my scheduled retirement date. 20 years was my limit. That was enough of me. Just got a dog. Scout, a German Shepherd. Began assisting neighbors with their carpentry needs. It wasn't much, but it paid the bills and kept my hands busy. The remainder was paid for by my military pension. Of Becky, I thought from time to time. Curious about her final destination. It was reported to James that she had returned to her hometown in Oregon, while employed by a different dental practice. Guess I'll have to start over. She had lost her hate on me. Frankly, I didn't care much for her. We were each free to make our own decisions. A Fort Worth woman wrote me a letter one night. At the time that Jeremy and Spencer attempted to scam her, her spouse was serving in the Navy and was deployed. She was given my name by the FBI because of the case. Through her writing, she conveyed the idea that you are unfamiliar with her. You, however, spared our house. Though it would have been simpler to give up and go away, I appreciate you standing firm. I gave it 2 reads before pinning it to my fridge. Looking at the letter would help me recall that there was some good that had come out of it, which would be a comfort on days when the memories were too vivid or the stillness was too loud. Jeremy was still incarcerated, as far as I was informed. Also Spencer. Once, the system got the job done. Personally, I was figuring out how to move forward, day by day in peace. Constructing a novel entity. Something untouchable, unforgeable, and untruthful. Something that belonged solely to me.